Welcome to mrhorrortale, where we tell scary stories that really happened. To ensure you don't miss out on other horror contents, remember to subscribe to the channel and activate the notification bell. Oh, Christmas, one of the most anticipated holidays of the year. The holiday where food, gifts, and family moments abound. In these stories, everyone thought that in one way or another, they were going to enjoy Christmas. Whether it is remembering a person from the past, building your future with another person, or even living in the present in blissful solitude. Regardless of how and with whom they started the day, these people did not know that this Christmas was going to be different and almost the last of their lives. Story 1. For almost everyone, the holidays are the happiest time of the year. Everyone gets together to celebrate with family and friends and have a good time. What not many people talk about is the darkness that lurks in the happiness of the holidays. This is the story of how I got a little too close to that darkness, and once I tried to walk away, it was too late. That darkness had a shape and a name. She was Angela, my ex-girlfriend. She suffered from depression, and like many people, she chose Christmas to take her own life. At first, everyone was there for me and supported me, but as time went by, I started to get strange looks. None of them told me directly, but they all wondered how after all this time, I still couldn't stop thinking about Angela, my ex-girlfriend. I understand why they think this. 5 years is a long time. What they don't know is that the reason I'm not over Angela is because she visits me. And to be honest with you, her intentions are never good. I'll be honest, my relationship with Angela wasn't very good. We had our first year of love, as all couples do, but it quickly evolved into what I considered a nightmare. On the one hand, I loved her. She was my first partner, and I had this strange feeling that there would be no life after her, as happens to everyone with their first partner. On the other hand, being with Angela was really very difficult. She was very jealous and possessive. Even at the end of the relationship, she was very violent. I never got angry with her because I knew she had depression, and I did everything I could to get her to seek professional help, but there was no case. She was in total denial. All this kept escalating until one day, well, let's say she decided not to be with us anymore. This day was Christmas, and she had already planned it, since she begged me to spend the night with her and refused to go to dinner with the family. I admit that I felt guilty for a long time. I felt that I could have done something more, and I felt that maybe I was to blame. But with time and therapy, I was able to solve it. What I couldn't resolve was what started to happen after that night. That night I was at home, alone. During that time, I was living in the house of my aunt and uncle, who went to live in another country, and therefore, they left the house for me. It was a very big house for one person, although I enjoyed the space. When it all started, I was on Facebook. That day was the anniversary of Angela's death, and I couldn't think of her again. I was meeting another girl 2 months ago, so I decided it was time to get over Angela. I went on her Instagram profile and deleted her from my friends. It was a phone call from my family, asking me to spend the holidays with them. This day was the 1-year anniversary of what happened. Honestly, I didn't feel like celebrating Christmas, so I refused the offer and decided to stay home alone. Once I ended the call, I was ready to close Instagram, but something caught my attention. Suddenly, a chat window opened up. When I saw the message, it said the name Angela Thompson, and it said she was online. Instantly, the indicator that Angela was typing popped up, and her message froze me.
Why did you delete me?
I don't know how to explain what I felt at that moment. My blood froze, and a horrible feeling of sadness and confusion invaded my whole body. This could not be real. There was no way it could be real. I closed the chat window, but suddenly it opened again with a new message.
Who were you talking to? Is your family trying to take me away from me again?
Desperate, I closed the chat and tried to close the Instagram window, but I couldn't. The computer wasn't responding. The computer was not responding to me. Every time I pressed the X to close Google Chrome, the screen became more and more distorted. Each time this happened, I could see Angela's face in her profile picture getting closer and closer to the screen, as if it wanted to get out of the profile picture box. In desperation, I unplugged the computer, and that's when it was over. The screen was black. I went to get a glass of water to catch my breath. Then I would call my family and tell them I will spend Christmas with them. I drank a glass of water and got ready to leave the house. I was ready for my family, the fireworks, the food and presents. I went to my room to get my cell phone, but as soon as I walked in, I couldn't believe what I was seeing. The computer. The computer was on again. I looked for the computer cable, and it was still disconnected. But that wasn't the scariest thing. The scariest thing was that Instagram was open, and on it, Angela's profile picture. Only there was a slight change. Angela was not in her profile picture. I tried to leave, but the door was closed. When I looked forward again, my attention was no longer on Instagram, but on what was next to the computer. Out of the darkness, a dark silhouette with long hair began to form. I tried to turn on the lights, but they didn't work. The two lamps had broken at the same time. The silhouette started to walk towards me, and when it advanced far enough, I could recognize it. It was Angela, but her body was gray, almost blue. She had a horrible and intense mark on her neck. I was terrified to understand what that mark meant. Desperate, I pounded with all my might on the door, hoping it would magically open, but I knew it wasn't going to happen. I fell to the floor crying and surrendered to whatever the spirit would do to me. I froze as she put her hand on my neck and began to squeeze me violently. The strength in her arm increased and increased. I had no will to fight or resist. I just cried, hoping it would end as soon as possible. I knew I was not to blame for what happened to Angela, but I still couldn't stop feeling sorry for her. Before I lost consciousness, I heard Angela's voice, whispering to me,
"You are only mine."
That was the last thing I heard before I passed out. When I woke up, I was in my bed, covered. I had a mark on my neck very similar to Angela's. I looked at myself in the mirror. I looked in the mirror, and besides the mark, I had a kiss on my forehead. The kiss mark hurt. It wasn't lipstick. It was a bruise. After that evening, I stopped trying to communicate with my family. I didn't want to drag them into whatever it was that was haunting me. It's been a while since that night. I've never been in a relationship with anyone, and I've slowly moved away from my friends too. Whenever I am with someone, I feel her presence. I feel that Angela is close, watching me. Sometimes I even see her silhouette in the dark. She doesn't want me to be with anyone, only with her. Today, just like when all the tragedies in my life happen, it's Christmas, and she is still stalking me. I don't really know what to do or how to get rid of her. I just know that whatever I do, I will have to do it alone. Story 2. Hey, my name is Andrew. You may not know me, but I'm a recognized chef in my country. I don't want to brag, but I'm really very good. I've been a judge on many reality shows. People know me quite well, not by the name Andrew, but by my stage name, which for obvious reasons I would not like you to know. But I'll just tell you this story so you can learn from my mistakes. You see, I wasn't always one of the best chefs in the world. As a teenager, I didn't even like to cook. I loved people cooking for me, but I didn't know how to cook at all. That is, until that one Christmas night. That night I decided that I was never again going to go to a restaurant or eat something given to me by someone I didn't know. No, after what I experienced that Christmas, I decided that I would be the one to prepare my own food. I'll told you the story from the beginning. The day had already started out weird. I was in a hurry to meet my girlfriend and go get something to eat together. Neither of us got along very well with our family, so we decided to spend Christmas together in a fancy restaurant. Suddenly, a car ran a red light and almost ran me over. I got out of the crash intact, but I fell off my bike. And let me tell you, it was a miracle I didn't hit my head. Before what had happened, the driver got off worried and came running towards me. He appeared to be a middle-aged man, polite, relaxed, and friendly, although I could see on his face that he felt really guilty for having caused an accident. The man checked that I was okay and asked me if I needed anything. He also told me that I was free to write down his license plate and sue him, as it was the right thing to do for what had happened. Laughing, I stood up and told him that it wouldn't be necessary. What had happened was an accident and could happen to anyone. Grateful but somewhat confused, the man smiled at me, telling me that he was late for work, but that he would be eternally grateful for my generosity. After that, he just wished me a Merry Christmas and left. Soon after, I met up with my girlfriend, and we started looking for a place to eat. We looked everywhere, but there was nothing new. Everywhere we went, we could find burgers and fries or pizza. We wanted something different. Halfway there, as if sensing our dissatisfaction, a man stopped us and invited us to eat at a fancy restaurant called the Christmas Dinner. To be honest, I didn't know it, but as it was a hidden and quite exclusive place, and according to what the man told me, it was a place that was only open at Christmas, we agreed to enter the mysterious black door that the man indicated and went in. As we entered, I immediately noticed the peculiar atmosphere of the place. The dim lights and soft music created a peaceful atmosphere, but something in the air was not quite right. I couldn't put my finger on exactly what it was, but an uneasy feeling settled in my stomach. My girlfriend, on the other hand, seemed very calm. She was casually talking to me and telling me that she liked the place. I admit that gave me some peace of mind, and we were able to get on with the evening. As I waited for my food, I looked around. The restaurant was full of people, and they all had Christmas hats. It was as if there had been a dress code that we were not aware of. There was no laughter or lively conversation, just murmurs and muffled whispers. I also noticed that there were no people our age. They all looked to be in their 50s and 60s. I decided to just ignore what was going on and start eating. While eating, the music stopped, and the murmur of conversation had died down completely. People were still looking at me, but now their faces expressed more than curiosity. They were desperation, anxiety, nerves. Something was wrong with these people, and neither my girlfriend nor I could belong a second longer. Before we left, I got up to go to the bathroom. I needed a moment to recover. I looked in the mirror, but to my surprise, someone grabbed my arm. One of the customers was next to me, grabbing me. I asked the man to let go immediately, but he didn't. I would even say he squeezed harder. His eyes were lost in mine. The man was drooling and had a terrifying face, full of perversion and evil. With a sharp blow to the stomach, he fell to the ground, surrendered. From the restaurant, I heard my girlfriend's desperate cry for help. In a hurry, I ran to the bathroom door, and when I opened it looking for my girlfriend, I was shocked. Everyone in the restaurant went from looking at her to looking at me. They were all standing around with their Christmas hats, looking obsessive and sickly like the man in the bathroom. They all began to ignore my girlfriend and slowly approached where I was, ready to do who knows what to me. Cornered, I fell against the wall in fear, until a man dressed as a chef stepped in the middle. This was the man from before. He almost ran me over with his car. He just stood, really calmed, and asked the people to let me go. His voice had changed. He sounded more professional, reserved, and cold. After saying this, people returned to their seats, and he looked at me and my girlfriend, who joined us, still terrified. The man calmly approached us to tell us that we should not be here, and that we should leave. These are all cannibals, people who want to have Christmas dinner. They want to eat young people our age. That was their intention all along. The waiter told me that now our debt was paid off, but not to try anything weird, as he would know. At that moment I realized something. What I was eating before. The waiter told us that they didn't sell animal meat, only human. That means that all this time, I've been eating humans. At this realization, I fell to the floor wanting to vomit while my girlfriend fell to her knees, almost losing consciousness. I grabbed her by the arm and ran away as fast as I could. As I did so, I could see how the waiter, who at that very moment went outside slowly and quietly to watch the fireworks. Once we arrived at my house, we considered calling the police, but was that going to make any sense? We were in middle of Christmas. There was no way that someone would take the call. Instead, we just spent the night puking in my house, considering how close we came to being dessert for some millionaire psychopaths who wanted to eat human flesh for fun. It's been several years since that day. My girlfriend and I are still together, but we don't talk about it anymore. We feel it's reliving a ghost we don't want to remember. Maybe it was the coward's way out. For sure, we would have helped many people so that this does not happen to them, but we are afraid to do it, and no one can blame us for that. Since that day, I don't trust anyone anymore. As I told you, I am the one who makes the food in Christmas. I will never again be willing to eat food that I don't see how it is prepared on the spot. To have eaten human flesh, even once, is more than I will ever be willing to do in my entire life. Story 3. I'll be honest, I never liked Christmas. I've always considered myself a lonely person who withdraws into my own thoughts, and although I love my family, I don't always have the patience to deal with them, especially when they take a little too much for the holidays. Because of this, Christmas is usually an ordeal from which I can never escape. Never until that day, the day my uncle offered me to stay at his house for the holidays while he went to Europe to celebrate Christmas with my cousin and aunt. They had already left for the previous Christmas, as my aunt's family is from there. Only my uncle had stayed for work reasons, and now he had gone to visit them. Little did I know that I would not be spending Christmas with company, even without knowing it. He forbade me from inviting friends over or hanging around the yard too much. I didn't understand why, but I assumed he didn't want me to walk outside too much, as the large amount of snow that had accumulated could cause an accident. After giving me many instructions on how to take care of the house, he left me a large amount of food in the refrigerator and left. And so, my first good experience in Christmas began. I must admit that at the beginning it was better than I expected. I didn't feel uncomfortable being alone, and I felt I could do whatever I wanted. Everything was going perfectly until in the middle of the night, a noise woke me up. More surprised than scared, I got up quickly and looked around. There was nothing, just the darkness of my uncle's room illuminated by the intense moonlight coming through the window. I looked out the window to see if it was snowing, and to my surprise, not only was snow falling, but there was a storm. At that moment I realized that what was illuminating my room was not the moon, but the light reflected in the snow that covered the whole house. Surprised, I stared outside without realizing that behind me, something was happening. I turned around quickly when I heard a noise coming from the bedroom door. I thought I was not going to see anything, but in the shadows, something was certainly distinguishable. It was the silhouette of a child. His face seemed deformed on one side. He was dressed in a Christmas outfit that I felt I had seen before. At the time I didn't think he was a ghost or something paranormal, just a lost child. I approached him slowly, trying to figure out if this was a joke or if the boy really didn't know where he was. I asked him who he was, if he was okay. I just wanted to help him, but the boy didn't answer me. I took a couple more steps toward him, slowly and carefully. I didn't want to scare him. When I was only a few steps away, the boy seemed to react for the first time, and furious, he raised his hand and with his index finger pointed at my window. Suddenly, without anyone touching it, the door slammed shut and the window exploded, causing all the snow to start pouring into the room. I opened the door quickly, and to my surprise, the boy was gone. There were no rooms nearby, and there was no way that child could have run fast enough to hide. Terrified, I desperately went out to look for him, but he was nowhere to be found. The only thing I found was his Christmas hat on the floor. I didn't know what I had seen, but then I thought, If that was a person, how come the alarm system hadn't been activated? Worse yet, how could that child have run so fast without making a sound? The more questions I asked myself, the more and more afraid I became of what I had seen. I ran to the dining room to get into my father's truck and leave the house. After this, having to put up with my father making awkward jokes while watching the fireworks didn't sound like a bad idea. Until suddenly, I heard a noise coming from the refrigerator. In response, I approached it. I knew this was a bad idea. I had no reason to check the source of that sound, but for some reason, I did, and what I discovered was unimaginably horrifying. Contorted inside the fridge, the white boy was staring right into my eyes, making a strange choking noise. Frightened, I backed up and got out of there, but the boy came out of the fridge and, with all his bones broken, somehow began to chase me at high speed. In desperation, I tried to open the patio door, and luckily, it opened. The snow was getting heavier, and the night was freezing. I went to the center of the courtyard, terrified, very cold, and with little clothing. While this was happening, I could see the fireworks coming from the city. Everyone was having a good time except me. I felt very bad for not valuing what I lived with my family. And now it was too late to get it back. Suddenly, a hand came out from under the accumulated snow and grabbed my legs. That hand was very small, but familiar. With enormous force, it pulled me down. My body was sinking deeper and deeper into the snow. As my body went numb, I realized that the strength of this being was too big, and I could do nothing to escape. Suddenly, with half of my body in the snow, I felt my foot touch something hard. It was not the child. It was as if it were wood. As soon as I felt this, the hand stopped pulling me, and it was all over. Confused, I pulled out the wooden box I felt on my feet and went inside with it. The box was very heavy and big. It also had a foul smell. When I opened it, I couldn't believe what I was seeing. Full of maggots and insects, the box contained the corpse of my cousin. When the police were able to get through the snow and arrive, I told them everything that had happened. Immediately, they called the airport to arrest my uncle. They could only catch him because his flight had been delayed by the snowstorm and the bustle of angry people who did not arrive in time to celebrate Christmas with their families. After much questioning, the truth came out. A short time later, they found my aunt's body buried a few meters away. My uncle confessed everything. He had had too much to drink the previous Christmas, but instead of being the funny drunk, like my father is, he always got violent. And that night, there was a tragedy. In the middle of an argument, he accidentally threw my aunt down the stairs. When my cousin saw him, he jumped on him and beat him to death. My cousin had gotten out of bed because he thought the noises from the fight were actually Santa Claus with his presents. You can choose to believe my story or not. If you had told me what I was going to live that day, I would not have believed you. But after what I experienced, I realized that there are forces that we humans do not understand. I have renewed holiday cheer. I still hate Christmas, especially now that it brings back memories of that horrendous night. But at least now I appreciate getting through it as quickly as possible with the support of my family. Oh, and after what was discovered about my uncle, my father stopped drinking. No matter how much alcohol he drank, he would never do anything like that to us. But sometimes he tells us that every time he sees a bottle of beer, he remembers his brother, and he can't help but imagine him in his last moments with his son. Thanks for watching. If you like the stories, remember to subscribe and activate the notification bell so you don't miss any other true disturbing stories. See you next video.